I think we are recording.
We have a red light.
We're ready. Chief Harvey at the Ephrata Borough Police, and it is the 14th of August today.
Correct.
In the morning, how'd you get into police work?
I was blessed. When I was a kid in the first grade, and they said, what do you want to do when you grow up? Some kids want to be an Indian chief, some people want to be a shortstop, I wanted to be police.
No kidding.
So I knew I was destined to do this my entire life.
My son did the same thing.
And I have been in emergency services my entire life, ever since I was 18 years old.
From your professional experience meeting people, is this common? Because my son decided at very young that he wanted to go into this too.
I look at emergency services, be it police work, fire work, whatever. I look at it as a vocation. It's a calling.
Just like a minister, right?
And it's something that it's almost vocational to you because it's a part of your DNA.
Sure.
It's not something you can say, I'll do this 8 hours a day and go home.
Right.
You never quit being a guardian of the public.
Right. So it's a commitment. It's a lifelong commitment.
It's a lifelong commitment, and you never hang up your spurs.
Now, most of your training was in the Army as an NP, or?
College degree, work.
Where did you go to school?
I got a associate degree at Central Virginia Community College.
Well, you're from Virginia.
In Lynchburg, Virginia. And I worked my way through college working as an EMT at the ambulance service there. Back then, jobs were kind of scarce. Ended up joining the Army, being in the Military Police Corps. After a stint there, I was recruited by the Savannah Police Department. I'd worked for the Savannah Police Department almost 23 years, taught, trained internationally. Worked with them very closely in a lot of new initiatives, written, published. And then one day some people asked me, should I be a chief of police? I was hit by some search committees.
At Savannah? Or
while I was in Savannah. And interviewed a few places didn't fit. I ended up in Lebanon City, Pennsylvania.
Oh, I know that. Yeah, sure.
And then from there, after a 7-year tour there, I was called to come to Ephrata, and so I'm here and I'm enjoying it.
That's great. The time in Lebanon, you know, that city's in transit. Chief, can I do this again sometime and we'll talk about this in more detail?
Sure, absolutely.
This is not where we're going here.
I know.
In the course of your professional career, is there some solid faith, belief that is at the core of your practice?
Everything that I've ever done in my life, be it a military policeman, a police officer, whatever, we take a binding obligation to protect the Constitution.
And that's actually, you take an oath to that
Correct.
effect. Right.
And I call it an obligation to always protect, our civil rights. And one of the when I look at the Bill of Rights, when I look at, freedom of speech, there's a lot of times when people say people shouldn't say this thing, that people shouldn't air their opinion. We live in a democracy where everybody's entitled to their opinion. The only caveat is, the screaming fire in a movie theater, which would create a clamor or a danger. But if somebody wants to air, we live in a country where you can air your opinion. Some countries you bring up an idea like this, you could be slain, you could be assassinated. Whereas here, sometimes raucous debate is good. I totally believe in what I think Patton once said, if everybody in the room is not thinking, then nobody's thinking.
Right.
And I think sometimes we need to air out everybody's opinions, get the good, the bad, and sort out, for a good solution. So one of the things that I often try to tell, everybody's entitled to an opinion, as long as they're bringing something of worth to the table. And that's one thing I always say, don't ever shut somebody down and say they don't have a right to an opinion or freedom of speech, because we all do.
Yeah. Now, but if someone came up, freedom of speech, someone came to you and said, you know what, you have, I'm a Quaker. And I interviewed an awful lot of the people at the Quaker meeting. And there are people at the Quaker meeting who are absolutely convinced that we should disarm our police forces, that they should not carry weapons. Now, that might be something you would take exception to.
Oh, absolutely.
Assuming I approached you with that argument, how would you respond? Not what would you respond, how would you respond?
The way I've responded to that, and I've had this question brought up to me before, at one time on this earth there were probably 4 people, and one of them was a murderer and one was a victim.
Okay, we had Cain and Abel as
correct. That's what I'm going at
here.
So basically 25% of the population at that given time in the world were criminal. And there are people who are going to resist logic, reasoning, and common sense. It's just, I think, in our DNA. 25% of our population is not evil. I always say I deal with less than the 3% that you would not invite.
25% is not evil. You're never going to see it.
No, we'll never see. No, I say probably, when I said when Cain and Abel happened, 25% of the world were evil.
Okay.
Right now, our population in the United States, I say I deal with less than 3% that you would invite over for tea.
All right.
So, and there are some people who will resist. There are some people who are predators. And what I would say to someone who says we should be unarmed, there are three types of people in life. And I'll give it to you in the animal kingdom.
Okay.
You have sheep. They're passive, they're good creatures, they follow, they harm nothing. The only thing they want to do is be in a lush meadow and enjoy life.
Right.
Then there are wolves. There are wolves who are predators that prey upon the weak, the defenseless sheep. And then there's a sheepdog.
Okay.
A sheepdog is a loving animal. It sits at your feet. It gives you comfort. But then again, too, it protects the flock.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the sheepdog.
Okay,
Police officers are the sheepdog. Now, within the sheepdog, he has weapons. He has, carnivorous teeth to fight. He also has the drive to protect. That's his weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need weapons? Yes. And one thing people say about weapons, we're using more and more less lethal. We're using a lot of things now that are not, that's going to have a terminal ending. We're using a lot of other things, and we're using a lot more intelligence too.
Well, the taser, for example.
Correct. Tasers, pepper sprays. We use less lethal bean bags. Also, too, we use a lot of different other psychological methods in working with people to control them down. Like I said, you can't pull the teeth out of a sheepdog.
Yeah.
So, I understand, but I will also say the police forces that we have in this country probably, and I've had a chance to work and train with from other countries as well, we have probably the best and most logical use of force in managing resistance than other countries. Some people are very, very heavy-handed. It's shoot, no questions, end of story. Some people say, well, what about countries where they're total pacifist? I personally know one of the gentlemen who worked on the Norway shooting. Mm-hmm. They were totally not prepared for something like that, and no one ever will be.
Yeah.
So we live in a great country, and it's because of these rights, and it's because we have the checks and balances there. In a democracy, that's the reason we're defenders of that as well. So they can have their belief, but also, too, just remember when people say that they do not want, say, the police to have weapons, they can assemble in their church due to freedom of religion. And if somebody interferes with them, we're there to protect them, to give them that grant as well.
Okay.
So
you would say that you would be willing to talk to a person like this. You've talked to me. I mean, that conversation would be the way to go. Until what point? At what point would you have to say, look, this conversation is over? And how would you do that? I mean, some people can be adamant. They can keep coming back at you.
True. There's some people. There's some people who will not listen to logic and reason. And I say, I'm not going to change your mind. So we need to peacefully terminate and still be cordial about it.
Right.
Still have in a genteel fashion. The only time I really will not talk to people is when there's a chemical talking. There's some people,
I see. Alcohol or
alcohol, narcotics, drugs, things of this nature.
Mm-hmm.
That is not the person talking, but the chemical talking. And sometimes to debate people during this time is pointless.
We had a woman here in town. Actually, my family kind of helped take care of her for a while, who had a very unfortunate experience and became unbalanced. Mm-hmm. How do you train your officers to deal with somebody? Do your officers deal with someone like that, or
yes,
do you get people from mental health in?
In Pennsylvania, both police officers have to receive training at the state academy. They've also had update training a few years ago in dealing with the mentally ill, mentally disturbed,
right,
and also two other psychotropic issues that we have to deal with.
Psychotropic would be
sometimes with its chemical imbalances, and maybe they're not taking the right formularies to make their chemical balances correct. And the thing of it is, we are not psychologists, we're not medical doctors. But one of the true things that we do is, and most police officers are trained in what I refer to as called tactical talking.
Okay.
And it's a way that you can talk to people, and we call it cool the mark. And
cool the mark.
Cool the mark.
Mark being the person you're talking to.
And you've learned what cool the mark is when you went to the fair as a child. Mm-hmm. And there was the guy there trying to sell something.
Oh, sure,
and you're saying, I don't know if this is going to work. And then all of a sudden he would pick a colleague that's working with him in the crowd, and all of a sudden this particular device would work for him. So he said, oh, it works, I must buy this.
Sure.
So what that's called is cooling the mark. As long as they're selling the snake oil, that's not a problem. But when somebody starts to be a disbeliever, they would always have a coworker in the crowd that would buy one or make some exclamation, this is wonderful, this is dramatic, it saved my life. That's called cooling the mark. A lot of times what we do is learn to talk to them. And probably one of the best ways I can tell you is this. I learned years and years ago when I had a tragic case of a gentleman who went into the DTs. Mm-hmm. And he had actually started believing he saw the worms coming out of the floor. We were trying to get him to an ambulance and get him to medical help. And what we ended up doing was getting a cup and told him, let's pick up the worms.
Oh, yeah. So he
and you cooled him down. You played to his, to his dream, but also too you moved along the situation to get him to the help he needed.
And he felt that you were an ally. You were
Correct.
Somebody with him rather than against him.
And rather than sitting there and scoffing or making fun or jest, sometimes we tactically know how to work people and help them, or soothe the ruffle edges, shall we say?
Okay, Chief, thank you very much. We will get back to you with this.